Oh, boring. Shh, honey. Honey, Luke just woke up. He was in a terrible car wreck out of state, and now he's got amnesia. He doesn't remember that he's married to Laura, and in the meantime, she thinks he's dead, and she's fallen in love with some other guy, and Luke's nurse is in love with him, and I rolled my eyes because I knew that after they finished watching General Hospital, which is what my grandfather called it, they would change channels and watch my mother's soaps. The Edge of Night, bum, 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 and The Secret Story. I went outside to the garden. I was thinking about my own version of the soaps, how I was in love with a boy at church, one of the popular kids who did not know I was alive. And while I wandered out there amongst the snapdragons and the petunias, I made up a song for him. I want you, take off your laughing mask and show me the man who's buried deep inside, 'cause I can hear him yelling, screaming, let me out, let me out, I've got to breathe. All of that for a 15-year-old with pimples. But finally I found the right man, and I married him, and we had 2 sons. And in the meantime, my grandfather passed away, and my grandmother's health had deteriorated, so she needed to move to a retirement home. They needed to put her house on the market because she needed the money. And so I went with my 2 boys back to help my parents clean out the house. We spent the mornings sorting through piles and piles of magazines and other junk. My grandmother was an excellent gardener. She was not such an excellent housekeeper. But when I took a break, I took the boys out into the garden, my younger one on my hip and our older one by my side, and I said, look, now, those big white ones, those are called snowballs. Can you see why? And look at those big yellow ones looking down at us. Those are sunflowers. And I bit my lip so as not to cry. I knew that they needed to sell the house, but oh, I did not want them to sell the garden. When my grandmother turned 90, we had a big party for her at the nursing home. And all these relatives that she hadn't seen and we hadn't seen come, and it was really fun. And at the end of the party, my mom said, would you like to go by the house and see what they've done to it? I heard that the people who bought it have really fixed it up. And I said, sure. So we drove over to Flora and we parked in front of the house. And it was true. The house looked wonderful. They put siding on it, and the front porch, which had been starting to sag, they fixed that, and they'd even put siding on the old cinder block garage. But when I looked at the garden, I didn't know what to think. Everything was gone. The maple tree was gone, everything. The entire yard was covered with pea gravel. Finally, my mother said, well, I guess it's a good thing I did what I did. And I said, what did you do, Mom? She said, well, I felt kind of guilty about it at the time. Well, what did you do, Mom? Well, before we sold the house, I dug everything up. I dug up the peonies. I dug up the hydrangeas. I dug up all And I still have some in a box in the garage. Would you like some? And so now, my grandmother's iris bloom in my yard. In fact, they're starting to bloom right now at this early spring we're having. I am not the gardener that my grandmother was, but fortunately for me, iris proliferate like stray cats. And so now, I can go out on a cool spring morning, and I can peek into that secret chamber that the upper petals of the iris make and smell that subtle perfume that wafts like incense to heaven. And it's almost like I'm back in my grandmother's garden. Again. Thank you. Word. You know, in traditional cultures, elders are the keepers of the stories. And it's your job to pass on your stories to your children and your grandchildren, and probably some of you might even have great-grands. It's your job to pass on those stories, because if I had anything that I could do over in my life, I wish that I had known to ask my grandparents about their stories before they passed, because there's so many that I'll never get to hear, but I'm so glad to have the ones that I have. So tell your stories. Tell them, even if they roll their eyes, someday they will appreciate that you told them that story one more time. Thank you so much.
We really appreciate you coming.